Tepu, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Haru Neper. This is Kasankma Keperu with another exciting video for you. And in this video, I want to talk about how I traveled through time. Yes, it's true. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on this video. And if this is your first time to my channel, welcome. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications on when I go live or upload new videos. And also share this video with family and friends so we can get this revolution started and save the planet. Lastly, consider becoming a Patreon supporter. You can do so for as little as $1 or $5 per month. You can cancel at any time. And as a Patreon supporter, you get exclusive access to instructional videos on how to perform a ritual, proper breathing techniques, mantras, how to put together a magical amulet, how to do oracle readings, and so much more. So support us on Patreon. Your support would be greatly appreciated. Now, I want to get into the subject matter, but before I do that, I want to just talk about a small incident that you may have heard about or will hear about that happened in Disney World or Disneyland or whatever you want to call it. And I've always gotten into trouble every time I go there with me and my family, you know. So I was there with me and my wives and our kids, you know. We have a lot of kids. We have 24 kids. So, you know, they have the actors and actresses dressed up as characters. So Princess Leia came up, and, you know, Princess Leia were one of my favorite characters. The original Princess Leia from A New Hope with the buns hairdo. And, you know, so we're enjoying it. It's a very hot day. She comes up and she asks me if I, you know, knew where she could get some hot chocolate. And I was like, hot chocolate? It's a very hot day. Why would you want some hot chocolate? And I was like, no. And then the next thing she asked me, well, we walked away and then she ran to catch up with us. And I was really pleased that here's Princess Leia. She wants to talk to me. Then she asked me if I knew where she can get some chocolate ice cream from. And I was like, chocolate ice cream? I said, no, I don't know. I'm, I think you would know better than anybody. So, you know, we had a little more small talk, and then she said that she was really interested in getting a hot dog. And I was like, what's going on? And so the conversation got weirder and weirder. So finally she was saying, what's my favorite ice cream? Do I like vanilla ice cream? I was like, no, I don't like vanilla. She said she likes vanilla and chocolate. And she was like, you know, I like to swirl. And I was like, what? And then, no kidding, I turned away because I was just so perplexed. And then before I know it, I felt his hand grab my package. And I was like, what? And I kind of recoiled. And the next thing I knew, security was talking to me about assaulting Princess Leia. I'm like, are you serious? And then a crowd grew, and it was a crowd of Ewoks. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And next thing I know, they're kicking me on my shins, you know, little Ewoks, with Princess Leia standing there saying I assaulted her, when she's the one talking about she wanted to swirl. So I'm like, this is a bad dream. So I turn over to my right and look at my wives, and of course, they're angry, and they don't believe that she drew first blood or she hit on me first. And I said, look, the girl was asking me weird questions, like where she wanted a hot dog, she wanted chocolate ice cream, she wanted to swirl. And I'm like, and they were like, Kasank, really? I mean, even my own wives didn't believe me. So how does that happen? That's some weirdness, man. So anyway, I had to go back to the security office. I was escorted to the security office by Mickey Mouse. You know how embarrassing that was? Seriously, do you know how embarrassing that was to be escorted to the security office with Mickey Mouse? I don't know, it was weird. Anyway, I explained the whole thing, and I don't know, they asked me to leave the park. So I left the park. I'm not going back there again. It was weird, you know? So you guys, you probably hear something about that. It was a really weird incident. But anyway, I digress. Let me get on to the subject matter at hand. It was actually just stalling so you guys can come into the chat room and I can get people coming in, all right? So anyway, enough of the Princess Leia talk, okay? Let's get down to some real business. I want you guys to know, on a serious note, that YouTube is one of the most fickle platforms I have ever worked with. YouTube put out a notice saying they're going to be deleting thousands of channels because they have a new policy, a new tolerance policy about what they will and won't accept. So consequently, what they did was they deleted one of my other channels. I mean, we that this channel was in operation for at least 3 years. And now they're deciding to delete it because it violates the community policy. And this channel really talks about racial harmony, tolerance, but in their eyes, it promotes racial division. Or I don't know, it's you know, I appealed the decision and they were like, well, we understand what you're saying and your channel does promote racial harmony, but we're going to delete it anyway. And I was like, what? And so I checked around to the New Age conspiracy theory arena. Turns out that my channel wasn't the only one that was deleted. Others had their channels deleted as well. So YouTube has a policy of doing whatever the hell they want without telling you and without providing any clear defined rules. So I got that channel deleted. So what's my point? What am I trying to say? That I want all of you out there, if you could take these videos that I'm making and share them with family and friends, please do so. It's very important that we get the word out there. I don't know when they're going to start deleting even this channel because they seem to be coming up with these rules on the fly. And it's unfair, especially if you're out here promoting dissent for the established order. They seem not to like that, including, you know, Facebook. And, you know, they're so quick to promote anything that has to do with their mind diversity, which means they're okay with promoting anything that's pro-gay. But when you try to promote something that's pro-Black, pro-Latino, pro-Asian, then they become uptight and want to change the rules on you. So it's very interesting about their policy, you know. And it works to favor only really one agenda and one group. So anyway, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. And I want to talk about, or actually revisit, a subject I've talked about in my previous videos, which has to do with time travel. And I want to just clear the air on this because since I've made that video, I've done a lot of research into this area, and I'm amazed at how little factual information exists about this area. Several years ago, I had traveled in time and traveled to the future. Now, when this occurred, I thought I traveled probably about 6 months into the future, but I think it was actually longer. I think it was probably a year to 2 years into the future. And I'll explain a little bit why. Because you know, when you do that, you don't really have an understanding or perception of time. And I'll get deeper into that. Now, after that event, I was severely traumatized. And I started doing a lot of research into time travel. And what I found out was that there were a lot of people who were claiming that they also traveled to the future. But most of these individuals were just outright liars, and they were full of it because they were talking about how they were members of a special Black Ops project, government project, and they got access to a time machine and this, that, and this. Well, when I traveled through time into the future, it wasn't by use of any time machine. It was my consciousness had projected into the future. Now, like you, I grew up on the idea of you had to have a physical time machine to go into the future. I had no idea that you could project your consciousness into the future. I didn't know that until this experience happened to me. And let me take a step back to explain something else about being born as I hate to use the word sage, but being born enlightened. When I was reincarnated into this existence, I remember as a kid learning about slavery and learning about how most indigenous cultures were taken over and they were raped and pillaged by white men. And the thought that I had at the time was, how could a select group of individuals destroy these advanced cultures of indigenous persuasion? And I remember talking with some friends in school at the time and a teacher, and no one really asked that question as to how you have just a small group of people, because white people represent the minority on the planet, take over and destroy advanced civilizations of color. Well, I remember in school, I had said rather emphatically, time travel. And for some reason, I stuck with that. I said, it had to be time travel. Now, of course, everybody thought I was crazy. And even I at the time was like, why did I say time travel? Because at that time, through a deductive reasoning process, I said that to me, that's the only way it could have happened. And lo and behold, after I traveled into the future and started doing my own research, it validated what I thought, the premise that I had as a kid, that it did happen through time travel. And I actually wrote an ebook about this, where I explored that possibility. Well, a recent movie came out called Avengers Endgame, where they talked about time travel through using quantum mechanics. And lo and behold, when I watched that film, I realized they just gave away the secret as to how to end racism and how to end oppression on the planet. But not many people got that. Because when you mix that science fact with science fiction, the science fiction part overwhelms the science fact. So people just say, oh, that was good entertainment. But what I came away with, what I walked away with, was a profound understanding of how to liberate people on this planet through the use of the quantum world. Now you have individuals like Vadim Zeland, who's a quantum physicist, talking about reality transurfing or quantum leaping, without understanding that this has already been done through the past, which has changed the space-time continuum. See, what I'm telling you is this, that we do not live on the right quantum line that we should be on, because our past has been radically changed. The ruling elite understands how to manipulate time and space. You see, the science that they're pumping out to us is that you need to have a physical time machine. You need to have a DeLorean motor car in order to travel through time. When you don't need a time machine, I've proven that. I've traveled through time. You don't. And those individuals you'll see on YouTube professing to have traveled through time and working with government experiments, time machine, are full of it. And I don't have her book. Darn it, I should have brought a book. But there's an actual woman who deals in, who's worked in the study of time travel, who theorizes that in the next 5 years, we will have mastered time travel. This is coming from a well-known scientist who's worked in that arena. Now, this is provable. This is not science fiction, science facts. Time travel is a reality. It is a possibility if you know what you're doing. And it does not require a physical time machine. That is a left brain concrete notion that we have to get rid of. You see, the left brain can only think in terms of the physical. The right brain understands the metaphysical, the abstract. And through experiments where they have cut individuals off from sensory perception, what they have found out that these individuals would then, consciousness will withdraw into what we call is the infinite now moment, meaning that there is no space and there is no time. And that what they have realized with the experiments, that consciousness, which is who you are, your true essence, and even Neville Goddard knew that, and he was a Christian, that consciousness has a property of non-locality, meaning consciousness is not fixed in any one point in space and time. It is everywhere, thus nowhere. Do you understand that? And if you understand that the true essence of who you are is not the physical body, but it's consciousness, then you know that you exist in all dimensions. You can bilocate. And what I mean by bilocate, you can shift to any one time period or any one location from here to Zeta Reticuli. But we are trapped in our progress of thinking is so retarded that we have been taught by this primitive Western man that the only means of traveling is through physical machines. We have already proven that when you take an atom and you manipulate it and you do something to it, another atom across the far reaches of space will react as if you are manipulating it. And what that tells us is that distance is an illusion. And that there is what we call as quantum entanglement, meaning things are connected. Now, let's get into this so we can understand this better. When I was doing my research after I traveled through time to understand time travel more, the only one legitimate case I could come across was the case of Rudolph Fentz. This is a man back in 1951 who took a walk. I'm sorry, not 1951, I'm sorry. In 1876, who took a walk and then dematerialized and materialized in 1951 in New York Times Square. And this was seen by eyewitnesses. He time traveled to the future from 1876 to 1951, appeared in Times Square, New York City, was confused as to what happened, ran and got hit by a car, and consequently died. He was taken to the morgue and they did an autopsy, and a police officer at the time period in missing persons was assigned to his case by the name of Hubert V. Rhyme, and he did the research and found that on Rudolph Fentz's person, he had a copper token from the time period of 1876, a bill for a horse, $70 in banknotes, and a business card which said, some business cards which said Rudolph Fentz. Consequently, Detective Rhyme, when doing the investigation, went to his old address and kind of validated that this man did exist back in that time period. This is the only legitimate case I can find of a person who physically traveled to the future. Now, there are portals on the planet that if you are lucky to find a portal, you can get transported in time and in space. But I wouldn't chance that because they're very dangerous and very hard to find. So let me get into what happened to my person to relay my experience, which made me a believer in time travel, because I wasn't even sure if time travel was possible, because you had the grandfather effect and things of that nature, which is basically if you go back in time and kill your you kill your grandfather, then you will never have been born, so you could never go back in time. So that's the grandfather, I guess, paradox. But if you were, and here's another thing you have to also consider: you can't go into the future and meet yourself, because if you were at this point in time to travel forward in time, you couldn't meet yourself because you're already traveling into the future. So what we see in films like Back to the Future, where Marty McFly goes into the future and meets himself, is not possible. Anyway, I digress. Let me get to the point. This happened several years ago when I was living in LES in New York. I had a really great apartment. Things were going great. And what I was doing was I was working with several different drugs and combining them, experimenting with them to try to see what effects they could have on my consciousness. Now, I wasn't purposely trying to travel into the future or do time travel. I was more or less more interested in doing deep, deep meditations, which I did achieve. But upon one experiment, I remember it clearly, because what had happened was I actually threw my consciousness into the future. As I said, I think it was for at least 6 months to a year into the future. Now, the interesting thing about that is that when this situation happened, I awoke, and that's Haru. Haru is when you awake, also in the 30th hexagram of the I-ching, the light. I was conscious of myself, and I was in my physical body. But I had no memory of the past or where I came from. I acted as if I belonged in that time period. And I went about my daily routine of shopping, doing things, never realizing that I was a time traveler. I was acting as if I belonged there and was doing everything normal. Nothing unusual. Shopping, I remember shopping, walking down the street, doing this and this and this. Only when my consciousness withdrew and I traveled back in time to the present day, did I awaken, and then the revelation hit me. I was in the future. I was in the future. 6 months to a year in the future. It was astonishing. Now, the thing was, while I was in that future self, I had no idea of who I was, because my persona and who I was just took on the normal routine of what I would be doing, who I would be in that future self. There was no idea of, oh, go find out what the lotto numbers are. Oh, find out what's on TV or who won the football game or the baseball game. There was nothing of that nature, because I didn't think I was a time traveler. I was just me being me in that future self. So when I came back and recoiled back into the present day, the past, and was awakened to the fact that I had time traveled into the future, it traumatized me. I started making phone calls to people, to friends and family members, telling them about the experience. And I wasn't sure what the hell had happened myself. I remember going home, and this happened about a week later, and standing in my kitchen, I got a phone call, and I knew that it was unusual because the phone had rang, and I said, something's up. And it was a friend of mine by the name of Tony. And I said, and him and I don't talk that often. And it was unusual just for him and I to talk live. Usually we would text or go through email. And Tony said something to me that was very profound. He said, do you know anything about time travel? I said, huh? He says, yeah, do you know anything about time travel? I said, yeah, a little bit. Why? He says, because he says, I think I know something about time travel. I said, what do you mean? I said, explain, Tony. He says, I think you can travel through time without a time machine and using your consciousness. I was shocked. I was floored when he said that. For one thing, I was like, why did he call me? And how could he bring this up at the exact time, which is synchronicity, that I had just traveled into the future? So consequently, him and I had a long conversation about it, and I told him I had traveled to time, and that yes, you can travel to time without a time machine. After that point, he began to experience some very, very unusual phenomena. Everything from the Mandela effect to other weird instances. But that's a subject for another video, okay? Now, when that happened, it was no doubt in my mind I had traveled into the future. But as I say with all of you Magi's, that whenever something in your life happens to validate whether it's true or not, you do not validate it using your own mind, because your mind is limited. You go to the oracles, the word of God. So I went to the oracle and I said, did I actually travel through time? And the answer was yes. And that sealed it. That's how I knew I had traveled through time. So at that point, I did investigations about non-physical time travel. Almost nothing is written about it. Nothing is written about it. That's how I knew this was a legitimate phenomenon. Because everything I had read talked about physical time machine or physically traveling to the future. Now, lo and behold, quantum mechanics is taking off, becoming more mainstream. And one of the principles they talk about is not only bilocality, but it's also that the only thing that really exists is the now moment, and time is an illusion. And that the past and the present are merely different perspectives on the now moment. Does that make sense? So it made total sense how my consciousness could travel to the future, because I just merely shifted perspectives. The Haru is your waking perception of things, Haru or Horus. So the faculty of Haru shifted, and they talk about the I of Haru in ancient Kemet, from this perception of the now moment to a different parallel experience. See, you're having an infinite number of experiences right now, but the only thing that you're aware of is this present now moment and this experience you're going through. But you can shift consciousness, can shift from this now moment to a what you perceive to be a future now moment. Because there's no future, there's only different now moments. So your consciousness can shift to experience a different now moment, which you perceive to be as a future or a past. And that's exactly what my consciousness did when I was taking the different drugs. It merely withdrew and shifted to a different perspective that was a different now moment, which I incorrectly labeled as the future, or as we incorrectly label as the future. And then when I return to this perspective of this now moment, which we can say is the past or the present now moment, I became conscious of the fact that I had shifted perspectives or transferred my consciousness into my physical body that existed in the future, if you want to use that terminology. And what happened after that, for a period of a year, I was traumatized. Everywhere I went, I kept asking, what time is it? What year is it? What time is it? What year was it? My friends got sick of it. I started getting afraid. If I saw a clock that happened to stop ticking, it frightened me. Because when this experience happens, it's not like a movie. It's not, oh, cool, I'm Back to the Future. I'm Avengers Endgame traveling through time. It's shocking. You're disoriented. You have no basis on which to ground yourself. Because when you are traveling, your consciousness is projecting, you lose contact with the physical self and contact with perception of space and time. Therefore, you're not rooted, you're not earthed in anything, and you are not used to that. So when I returned, I kept wanting to ground myself. I kept asking myself, what time is it? What year is it? Oh God, don't let this happen again. And I would wake up with that constant fear of being thrown into the future or to the past and not knowing where I was. It was terrifying. It wasn't like the movies where it's all cool and futuristic and stylish. And I'm the time travel. I'm the time traveler's wife. Look at me. I got powers. No, it's not like that. It's scary. My hands were shaking. I was traumatized. I couldn't stop looking at the clock. I couldn't stop looking at the calendar. What day is it? Where am I? And finally, after a while, I began to be rooted and started saying to my person, okay, it's not going to happen again. You're not taking those drugs anymore. You're not going to, or I should say herbs, because you guys will think I'm taking some really weird psychedelic drugs, and that's not what it was. And I was like, okay. Then I began to think about how to harness this power, how to use it. You see, you're being lied to and misled about the truth of time travel. You're being misled by a group of individuals who call themselves scientists, but all they can think of is the concrete, the physical. Just as like they're looking for extraterrestrial life, but they're looking for a physical manifestation of extraterrestrial life, not realizing that life, since this universe is billions of years old, has life that has transcended the physical body. Why aren't you looking for that? In his great work, Arthur C. Clarke, 2001: A Space Odyssey, conceived of aliens who were non-physical and who were directing man's evolution. I want you all to start thinking in those terms, because this is the only way we're going to save the planet. And for those of us who are in the occult or into the esoteric, the spiritual, however you want to call it, we have powers beyond measure. We do not need to listen to, nor do we need to rely on what these so-called scientists or scholars are telling us, because they're on the wrong track, and they have been for a long period of time. As a child who is being reincarnated into this existence, I knew how the planet was imprisoned. Even as a young child in a classroom where the teacher and all individuals were asking kids, how did this small group of individuals enslave the planet? And I emphatically yelled out, time travel. And we are so primitive in our thinking that the mere mention of something like this makes us chuckle, and we think it's cute, we think it's funny. It's real. And the ruling elite controls space and time. Because who am I? I'm nobody. But if I knew enough to mix the right herbs to transfer my consciousness into the future, them with all of their money, their wealth and power and resources, what do you think they can do? What do you think they can do? They can do much more than I could ever. Further research needs to be done on this. And in India, I'm happy to say a lot of the gurus are doing the research, are ahead of the curve on this. In fact, a lot of what quantum physicists are studying comes out of India, Indian religion, Hinduism. And India has a portion of that which is practice. It's black magic. And the Japanese have their own form of black magic. But it's really an advanced science. It's not black magic. And when you start delving into these things, you get to be a powerful person if you practice them right. Now, if I was a little more educated and knew what I was doing, I wouldn't have been so traumatized by the experience. The ruling elite is telling us what they're doing by making these movies. One movie is Altered States, the other one's the Avengers Endgame. They're telling us that they're doing these things, but we're not paying attention. We think it's all entertainment. There are things going on this planet that we could not imagine. And we have got to start getting on the ball. We have to start realizing that if we're going to save this planet, it's going to take a non-traditional means to do so. They're not going to enslave you by military might, by putting in place a one world government, by putting in place a militarized state. They're going to enslave you by brainwashing you so you will enslave yourself, that you will willingly enslave yourself and fight to the death to be a slave. That's their goal. You see, when you do research into this arena, what you'll find out is they already know how to do mind control. They already know how to do telepathy. They already know how to do teleportation. These things have already been invented, but you will not know about it because they're not going to tell the mass media. They're not going to parade this into the local news, because it gives them an advantage to have this so-called advanced technology. And the sad fact of the matter is that here we have our own ancestors have left behind advanced science. Our Kemetic ancestors, our Chinese ancestors, our Indian ancestors have left this advanced knowledge, and we recoil from it. We want to go to church. We want to go to Sunday school. We want to learn to be dumb. We want to learn to be stupid. We want to praise a savior, which only limits our ability to do anything in life. And it was someone that hands you power. You go, oh no, I don't practice that stuff. No, I don't want that stuff. Meanwhile, the ruling elite is not only practicing it, they're making it better. They're taking it to the 18th level. There is so much you could do. And you don't even realize your power. There's so much you can do. The first thing you can do is donate to the channel. If you like this message, please consider donating so you can keep the channel going. As I said before, your donations would be appreciated. Let me say hi to the Magi's that are in the channel here, in the chat room. Hetepu Harmony, I love that name. Doorkeeper, Namaste. Varane Anderson, Hetep, Namaste. I gotta pronounce this right. Sinulu, Hetep. Empress, Namaste. All right. Let me see what you're saying. You're saying here that, so you suggesting that this method, prophecy, is utilized to view the future and prophesize. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Exactly what I'm saying. And it's something you can do as well. It's not out of your reach. It's not very difficult to do as well. Empress, Trini, peace. So, with that said, I want you all to embark on this journey to start uncovering the truth of the past, start practicing, not just getting intellectually stimulated by these conversations, but to really live this information so you can have a better quality of life and become very powerful, become God man and God woman. This is Kasank Maya Keperu, son of Maat and Tahuti. My aunt is the beautiful goddess Heteru. Until my next broadcast, Amun Ra.